Welcome everyone to WAHS Podcasts, the newest addition to WAHS Media. My name is Sophia and I'm going to be your host for today. Whether you're listening to this podcast while driving, during work, or in between classes at school, chances are you're facing some sort of conflict in some area of your life. It could be that the car in front of you isn't moving fast enough and that if you switch lanes, you still won't be able to pass it. It could also be that you just spilled coffee all over your new white blouse, or maybe you just really can't wait to graduate. #senioritis. Either way, conflict in life is inevitable. Long-term or short-term, we always have to find ways to mediate and understand conflict. But have you ever dealt with a conflict so large that it turns your whole life upside down? Chances are that conflict was temporary. You learned how to solve it and you moved on. But what about something so large that it nearly defines you for your entire life? How about the generations that preceded you? In this country, the topic of race is a controversial one. Whether you're Black, white, Asian, Native American, or don't identify with a race at all, people deal with issues surrounding race no matter what. While some argue that race is a social construct, others argue that it's inherent. Race is a complex trait that has defined people for hundreds of years. But as we develop as a society and work towards equality, many individuals haven't allowed race to define them. In fact, one of those individuals is a student here at American Heritage School. Cameron Washington is the president of an activism club on campus called Progressive Generation, and she was accepted EA to the University of Chicago. She's also president of Spanish Honor Society, National Achiever Society, and on a strong pathway to success. Cameron, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course, thank you for having me.
So, can you please just describe what Progressive Generation is and what your role in it is?
It is a club kind of focused on highlighting issues among the Black community and other marginalized groups. We generate conversation and try to make productive discourse and share ideas.
So, referring to the issues that you mentioned, personally, what are the biggest issues facing the Black community today?
I would say in the most general terms that complacency within American society is probably the biggest issue facing the Black community, because as we are a country who started with Black people in America as slaves, and then we progressed through Jim Crow and the Civil Rights era, and racism was much more overt than it is now today. We kind of see ourselves as in a post-racial society and as if we have reached a stopping point. But I think that complacency is probably the biggest issue facing us, because I think we still have a ways to go.
How do you think Black History Month can address the issues facing Black people today, including complacency?
I think definitely looking deeper into Black History Month than just Martin Luther King, because although, yes, Martin Luther King was certainly an important individual, a very important figure in Black history, first of all, looking at other figures in Black history, and second of all, actually looking at Martin Luther King as more than his I Have a Dream speech.
At school, what do you think, or just maybe among people of our age group generally, what do you think the issues are that face, Black teens right now?
Blackness is just so diverse. There's so many facets to Blackness, and whether that has to do with your gender identity, your sexual orientation, where you come from, like your nationality, and your socioeconomic status, there's so much that goes into Blackness that can't really be confined into one single definition other than identifying oneself as Black.
What do you think the main goal of Black History Month is? And in terms of solving those issues, how do you think people use Black History Month as a way to kind of raise awareness, or do you think it's more of a way of changing social norms? What's your perspective?
Black History Month is definitely really important in trying to address issues of race today, especially drawing parallels between protests throughout Black history and protests now, which is what we're actually doing for Black History Month this year. But just especially drawing those parallels and seeing how history, it is an overused phrase, but how history kind of repeats itself, and how we see kind of reflections of the past in the present, and looking at how we can try to change that. So,
in terms of a club, Progressive Generation, on campus. Can you just further elaborate on what you guys are doing and, how you think that's going to impact the Black community as a whole, or the Black community at Heritage?
So for Black History Month last year, we kind of tried to focus on intersections of Blackness and tried to draw parallels between the struggles faced by the Black community and struggles faced by other marginalized groups. And we did that in the auditorium with a panel of members of different marginalized community. But I think it was good in starting to generate conversation. This year, we are holding kind of a more intimate gathering. It's not going to be a Black History Month assembly, but it's going to be an after-school event. But we are thinking of holding it kind of like a more orderly progressive generation meeting, whereas we have different topics about protest and Black history, and then also hip-hop and giving a voice to the voiceless and how it addressed like social issues and stuff like that. So we're going to be bringing all of that and how it relates to protest, and then we're going to ask the audience to consider certain types of questions when they're thinking about these things, and we want them to voice their opinions, voice their concerns, voice any questions that they may have, so we can kind of generate a conversation that is in a judgment-free space where people can really try to, I guess, educate themselves and exchange new ideas.
And how do you hope that this is going to change, the Black community? What effects do you want this progressive generation meeting to have for Black History Month?
Since we're going to be in a more intimate setting, we can actually have conversation and not just be progressive generation telling you what Black history is, but allowing you to voice, allowing the audience to voice what they think, and allowing, again, that exchange and trying to cultivate new opinions.
That sounds wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for your input, Cameron. It was truly lovely having you here.
Of course, it was my pleasure.
As Cameron said, Black History Month and Black culture itself is so wide, diverse, and encompassing, but I think it's amazing to see American Heritage students coming together to learn and understand the issues facing Black people and Black communities today. Thank you so much for tuning into our podcast. That's all I have for you today. But if you'd like to voice your own opinions on these topics, be sure to follow us at WAHS TV.